Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today again. This is part 2 of my interview with Larry Grobel, who is an author, interviewer, and he's a teacher as well. He wrote 30 books. He's on his 31st now. 6 of them are conversation books with the likes of Al Pacino, Marlon Brando, Robert Evans, Truman Capote, Ava Gardner, James Michener. He wrote another great book on the Houstons. His memoirs are quite fascinating as well. You have You Show Me Yours and You Talking to Me. He wrote for Rolling Stone, Entertainment Weekly, Playboy, New York Times, to name just a few. And of course, Joyce Carol Oates named him the Mozart of interviewers. So thanks again, Larry, for joining me again today after I pulled your arm a bit.
Happy to be back. You told me you had 40 more questions. I'll count it.
41. No. Well, no. Thanks again, because I really enjoyed our talk last week. So I'm excited to continue where we left off. Since this is we talk a lot about movies on the podcast, and I know you're a big movie fan as well. What are some of your favorite films?
Well, I sometimes think about films that I will watch over again. Citizen Kane is always one of them. King of Comedy.
Oh, I love that.
Is one of those films. With Houston's, it was Treasure of Sierra Madre and The Man Who Would Be King. And I don't know why I keep forgetting this. I'm always forgetting the one name of this one movie that I'll think of. I like a lot of foreign films. I liked Antonioni's films. I loved Fellini's films, Bergman's films. I don't know if I have the patience to watch some of them again. I keep saying I'm going to go back to some of these films, but there are a number of Japanese films, Mifune and all, that I've always liked. I've just taped a bunch on TCM of French films. So, I like The Godfathers, of course. I think they're terrific. I don't know, we can just name names for forever, but, maybe we'll get into it. Of course, the Brando films.
Yeah.
On the Waterfront, Streetcar Named Desire. The early ones, the first 5, in a sense, The Men, Julius Caesar, Last Tango in Paris. Performances, Meryl Streep's films. I'm kind of looking forward to turning my grandchildren when they're old enough, and maybe when they're 10, I don't know. But, onto black and white classic films, because I know kids don't like to watch, even college students, they don't care for watching black and white films.
It's a crime, I think, because they're missing out on so many great films.
Yeah, there's a ton of good films out there.
Well, yeah, I mean, we certainly have a lot in common there, because I love all those foreign filmmakers you mentioned. There was something that I was listening to a podcast you did, and correct me if I'm wrong, but did you write Pacino's Oscar speech for Son of a Woman? You did, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So why did you write that? Was he not was he worried about it? Or?
Well, I was worried about him when he won. I knew he was going to win. I didn't know if he deserved it for Scent of a Woman over his other performances. He deserved it for Dog Day Afternoon, and he deserved it for The Godfather. And Scarface too. He should have gotten an Oscar, but that film got killed when it was first came out. Became a cult thing later. So I thought he deserved. He was nominated like 7 or 8 times. So I knew it was his turn. I knew he was going to get it. And we were at the Beverly Hills Hotel. And I was talking, and then it was the night was coming up. He had to leave soon. So I said, do you have your speech? He says, no, I'll just wing it. I said, no, Al, you're not good at winging it. So I wrote something really fast and then printed it out, gave it to him. He read it, okay, and then he made a few changes, and wrote this. You broke my streak. That was the first line, what I wrote was, there goes the streak. There goes my streak, of losing. And he changed it to, there goes, he put a U. I can show it to you actually. I have it behind me it's on a wall.
Oh, sure. Yeah. If you have it, I wouldn't mind if it's close enough. But.
Yeah, it is. I have to go off camera for about 2 seconds, but I can do it. And And the funny thing is, I mean, about that was there was a part where I wrote about, somebody. He says, I don't know about it, how I feel about winning and losing and being, am I better than anybody else? But maybe there's a girl watching this in the Bronx where I grew up.
Yeah.
And she may get something out of this and inspire her. Okay. So I wrote that stuff. And then my cousin had called me before the show, and he said, "We think Al's going to win." I said, "Yeah, I do." I said, "I think." I said, "And if he does, you want to hear his speech?" So I read him the speech. Let him know. Anyway, he goes to an Oscar party, and he says, "I think Pacino's going to win tonight." He says, "Yeah." He says, "I think if he wins, he's going to call out some girl in the Bronx. He's going to say, talk about his streak." And he says these things. So it's like, what are you talking about? They laughed at him, He says, "No, matter of fact, I'll make you a bet. If he wins, this is what he'll talk about." He won about $200 that
day. Clever.
I actually told that to Al. It was funny. It was funny. Hold on one sec.
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. I'd love to see that. We'll just give Larry a second.
Here you go. So you can see I'm not making this up. Here's the actual speech. See, I retyped it, so he had his own copy.
There it is. Oh wow!
You broke my streak. And then you see anything here. This is his handwriting, and he,
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Did you ever consider auctioning that off? That might be worth a fortune one day, or even now.
Don't you think so?
Well, yeah. You wrote his speech. He's got his handwriting on it. That's amazing.
And this is from the LA Times or whatever, and it quotes from the speech, about you. And this is
right, yeah.
That's there I am with holding the Oscar.
That's awesome. That's incredible.
Yeah. All right. If you want to make a bid, just
if anyone in the comment box wants to start bidding, maybe by tonight we'll sell it off. Do you have a favorite performance of his? You mentioned Dog Day. Do you think that was
Dog Day? I love Dog Day.
Yeah, me too.
I like Merchant of Venice. As a matter of fact, I think Merchant of Venice is the best thing.
That was
the
great.
last best thing he's done. He's, all the films that have come since then, I don't think he matched that. And it's a good interpretation also of Shylock.
Yeah.
I thought it was a really good performance. But, I think the early films, the Dog Day, Serpico, Panic in Needle Park when he was really young,
I love that. Yeah.
I mean, look, I like The Devil's Advocate even, but here's a Pacino story. Al became really nasty to me.
Oh.
When he was making, during that time. And I would go, and he would just say nasty things, and and I couldn't understand it. I mean, he would snap, and then, because I hadn't read the script, I didn't realize that he was playing the devil, and he was behaving that way, because the way he would behave towards Keanu Reeves in the movie and stuff, I didn't get it. So, the thing about him is, he doesn't leave his character at home. I mean, at the studio, he takes it home. When he was Scarface, I mean, I've seen Al in a lot of different New Revolution. I went to England and was there when he was making that, and and there, it's just he's a different person each time he's making something. So you have to be aware of that to understand the friendship you're involved in, because otherwise it took me it was like an epiphany when I saw Devil's Advocate, and I said to him, "You were such a bastard during that whole time," and he just laughed, but that was that. But it was a good performance, that one. His films basically are always worth watching.
Yeah, I agree.
Sometimes he's over the top, I wouldn't say Jiggly, and I wouldn't say that ridiculous film with Adam Sandler. I would say, don't watch that if you can help it.
I haven't seen those two, but I know the ones you mean. When you say nasty, define nasty. Like, was he just like saying something personal against you, or just like a swearing at you? Or?
He was just being devilish. Okay.
Okay.
So if it could be nasty, it could be curt, it could be sarcastic, but it was the devil in him that was behaving. He wasn't going to be loving and hugging and acceptable unless he had an ulterior motive for it. See, because that's the character he was in, and
Right.
so he was that's where he was. Even when he played Big Boy in Dick Tracy, that was he didn't want me to see the final result. I know that he tested with a lot of different things. He had a long face, he had a square face, he had a wide face,
Yeah.
different things, cosmetically. And I kept saying, "What are you going to choose?" He says, "No, I'm not going to tell you." And then he told me to bring my kids. They were very young at the time.
Yeah, I saw those photos with your kids and him.
With Madonna, yeah, with him.
Yeah,
and
Madonna.
So, yeah, but when he became that character, he was in character with my kids as well. He was Big Bill. Come on, kids, let's do this. And then he would bark, at things, But that's kind of the fun of having an actor of that caliber behave in whatever character he is playing at the time.
Did you find he still does that?
Oh yeah, he was Don Corleone with me. I mean, Michael. He was Michael with me, and
wow.
It was nasty too. But it was like, he actually said the same words as he said to Fredo. "You broke my heart," And he did this whole thing, and I'm listening to him saying things to me, and I'm going, "I've heard this before." I have heard this before.
I think this is in a movie, Al. That you were.
I'm telling you. But to be yelled at by Michael Corleone, wow! that was really something.
Did you had mentioned he wasn't too pleased when you released the "I Want You in My Movie" book?
That's why he yelled at me.
It was over that. Okay,
it was over that. It was over that book, and it's unfortunate because that book to me is very detailed.
I love this book. It's great.
Yeah, it really. I mean, if you want to get an idea of how an independent filmmaker like Pacino, who's obsessive, but is also finding his way. He's not a professional photographer, or cinematographer. He's not a professional writer. He's not and so he's trying to, put all these things together. He has a camera crew, but he's directing it, but he's in it the whole time. And I was in it quite a bit too, which got mostly cut out. But I was there every single day of that shoot. That's all I did when he was making it, and then for the next years and years, it took him 8 years to finally release it. I saw about 45 versions of that thing.
That's right. You said it in the book. Yeah.
It was 3 hours and 15 minutes, the first version.
Wow. Yeah. I quite like that documentary, docudrama, whatever. I thought it was very good.
Yeah.
It's too bad he doesn't. Why do you think he doesn't try to have some bigger release on? I mean, he finally put out looking for the DVDs of Chinese Coffee in those movies, but do you think he'll try to push that Salome one day?
No, whatever happened with it happened. That's what it is. It'll always be there, and he's happy about that. Looking for Richard, though, the New York Times gave it the top 10 films of the year. They included that one, which is pretty.
Yeah, I love that one too. That's if anyone's an actor or wants to do Shakespeare, it's very, very inspiring.
To me, that's the most admirable part of Al professionally, is that he always looked at the smaller films as what he wanted to do. It was his money. He, except for Wild Salome, that was people invested in that, but he ended up putting in double the money. So he put in a few million of his own. But it was like, why make money? Why make all this money if you can't use it for something, for your art?
Exactly.
Henry Moore was like that. The artist Henry Moore made, his sculptures made millions of dollars. And I said to him, you're a rich man. He's an old man. He's a rich man. But what have you done? He said, well, I bought all the houses on my street. There were 12 houses. He bought 11 of them at that time on Much Haddam. It was called the road. In Much Haddam. And then he said that what he liked to do is he had this giant construction, equipment. So like a forklift and so things. So he could lift up a bronze piece that he did, an abstract piece that may weigh 5 tons, some giant thing, and he would have it lifted and moved to another area of the yard, because he had all these homes now. He had huge, he had huge piece of property. And then he said then sheep would come and they would graze around it. And he said, I like the way it looked over there. I can move. And that's what, that was the luxury of being a rich artist, that you could move your gigantic steel sculptures and whatever to, from one place to another.
Oh my God.
and that was Pacino making these small films. He was doing what he wanted to do. In a way, I think that's what I do too now, is that I feel like I did the commercial books. I did the books on Pacino and Brando and Capote. I did The Art of the Interview and the Houstons. I did all those books. They're legitimate books, and they serve a purpose, of course. But then I wanted to do my own art. I wanted to do my own novels and my own stories. And I would suggest it to agents, but nobody wanted to even read it. They didn't want to give you. They said, we can get you $500,000 if you do a thing on this, but they don't want to agent something like a book of short stories. Who's going to pay anything for that? They don't want to do it. And you can't do it yourself. You can't go to a publisher. Even if you've been published with them, they got to go through an agent. This is the way that publishing works, and especially for fiction. Nonfiction, I can still squeak in if I need to. But I said to myself, well, the hell with it. I'll do what I want to do. I've only got one life to live. If I'm going to sit here wanting to write novels, but no, I'm not going to do it because I have to do another Conversations with Nick Cage or Conversations with Woody Harrelson. I would be interested in talking to them, but I don't want that to be my life. I don't want to end my life with a whole bunch of conversations with other people. I want to be able to say, what else? What did I do? Was I a real writer, or was I just a journalist, a good interviewer? So I wanted to write because I always wanted to do that. My goal was my ambition was always to be a fiction writer, and I got into nonfiction, but I always had a fiction writer's perception of things. And I treated all my subjects that way, in a sense, that I was a character going in to talk to a famous character, and I would write it in a way that was to me like a play, like a 3-act play.
And they feel that way too. They feel like novels. Like that's what I like. How you set the stage with Brando on the airplane on your way to Tahiti. Like like you said, you're a character in the story.
I feel it. And see, that's why I also, I wrote this screenplay based on the Brando Conversation. Yeah. And I see it. I could direct it. I will not, because no one would ever let me, but I could, because I know the island. I know what happened between us. I know the drama, and I know the inflections, and I have all that, in my head. So, and I wrote this script about it. I thought, this be a good movie. Now I say, okay, good Netflix, good Amazon, Prime, good Hulu. It should be there, and
it really should.
It's just it's to me it's obvious, just like the Houstons is obvious as a miniseries. The Houstons should be a maybe 10 episodes, 8 or 10 episodes, and it would run for 2 or 3 seasons.
That would be a great show.
Yeah.
There's
one thing to talk about it. It's another thing to find a producer to say, hey, let's do it. That's
exactly. Has anyone ever approached you to say, I want to turn these into movies?
Well, yes, with the Brando, I had 2 independent production companies optioned it, and both times I found that they had other projects. So, after all the patting on the back and hugging and everything, this is great. And then, with a rewrite of it, the new draft, you don't hear from them anymore. And you say, wait a minute. And by the time that you get near the end of the year, you say, hey, the year's, oh yeah, listen, give us a little more time. We've had this film and this film we were doing, so give us a little more time. And I'd say, well, you got to pay for the more time, because you didn't do anything in the beginning. What am I going to do? Let you keep having it? So I would always, I take it back. and here I am with it again, trying again. Maybe it'll happen. I mean, Anthony Hopkins wanted to play it.
Yeah.
And what's his name? Did I talk about this before? See,
You mentioned Woody Harrelson, Jeff Bridges came up, and
so don't cut me off. You have to, Robert, cut me off.
Okay.
And move on.
I gotta write that down. I'm too nice. It's the Canadian in me.
You're gonna have a bad interview. People watching this are gonna say, he talked about this before.
That's a good point. That's a good lesson.
And it's also important to cut somebody off sometimes. If I go on and on and on, you're not going to get your 40 questions in. You're going to ask me to come a third time. So I'm counting on you to lead me, and you're not. Yeah. I'm just happy. So that's your assignment.
This is something I got to get better at. Yeah, this is something I. So there are any podcasters or interviewers listening. There's the advice: cut off your guests when they
cut them off politely, but it's so funny. My daughter once did a television show, and when she was in high school, and I helped produce it. And one of the people I got there was this comedian guy. He was Sam Denoff. He was wonderful. I played paddle tennis at his house and all. And he was he wrote for Dick Van Dyke and Mary Tyler Moore and things like that. So, and he always was funny. So I asked him, would he be a guest on my daughter's show? And he did. And he came on, and then she would ask him questions, and he would go on and on and on. But I had taught her, you only have a half hour in the show. If you let someone talk, they're going to take 15 minutes. You're going to lose your whole interview.
Yeah.
And she was good at it. She was, she got enough. She would still, enough. She was done. And at the end of it, when it was over, he said, it was very good. He said to her, but you should really let people talk when they have something. You shouldn't have to be, it's kind of like doesn't work. And I looked at Maya and I winked. I said, "Oh, don't worry about it, honey." You did the right thing.
Well, you know what I should do? I should test myself, have someone on for 20 minutes, have 40 questions and see if I can pull it off.
You should. You'd be surprised. It'll move along fast, and you make people think faster. You give me enough time to think, I'll just, keep thinking, what's my favorite movies?
That's a good point. I'm gonna write that one down. There was something that you brought up I was gonna ask about, which was that you always went in with a novel, perspective on everything you did. So if you met a young writer who wants to write novels, what would your advice for that person be?
I don't know. It's easier to give advice to a nonfiction than to fiction. A fiction, you want them to be a bit experimental. I really would advise to read, to get a sense of the different styles that they're out there. You should read something by Fitzgerald, of course, The Great Gatsby. You should read The Sun Also Rises of Hemingway. You could try to read Faulkner, The Sound and the Fury. Take a look at even Gertrude Stein, three, what is it called? Three something. There's three characters, there's three stories in there. But that's the early years. And Joyce, of course, Portrait of the Artist. Get a feel for what was being done in the 20s and 30s. Then look at some of the things in the 40s and the 50s. You should read a little of Updike. You should read a little of Don Levy. You should read a little of Toni Morrison, and just get a sense of how broad Don Quixote. You should definitely read that. It's first novel, really. But again, Borges. You read a lot of great fiction. You can get a sense that there's a freedom there. If you just get caught on one, if you just read Hemingway, you're going to write like that, and you don't want to do that. You find your own voice. How do you find your own voice? Well, first of all, it doesn't hurt to be well read, and to get a sense of people's style. You can see people who you love to use metaphors, like Norman Mailer, or people who had a great sense of narrative, maybe not a great sense of word power, which James Michener would be like that. Every writer has a different, stamp in a sense.
Yeah.
And so, doing, reading like that, and then getting to see what is it that captures you? Why are these novels considered great? Why did they even get published? Is it the characters that were so good? Is it the plot that was so good? Was it the narrative? Was it the way the opening caught you, Catch 22, for instance. The way was it the repetitiveness of it? Was it the idea that you can do black humor, you can or something that is outrageous, or something that is Jane Austen, more confined in a certain way, like Capote, his great writers, but they all had different things that they were doing. And to me, if once you do that, Elmore Leonard, if you want to read really good crime writer, it's just look at how they use dialogue. See, and see where you are with that. Try to write maybe in 5 different styles. Elmore Leonard actually copied For Whom the Bell Tolls. He copied pages and pages of it, or his short stories. Actually rewrote it in his typewriter or by hand, just to feel what was Hemingway doing. And that's a good way to try to learn how to do that. You haven't cut me off yet, and you're going to get me.
No, because see, I'm interested. Right? Would you tell them though to do what you did and sort of branch out into many different forms? Interviewing.
No.
Okay.
No, that just came about. I never knew I was going to be an interviewer. I never knew that. I came back from Ghana. I was going to write my fiction. I was going to write novels. But then I said, okay, I got back to New York, and I think, what am I going to do? I got, maybe I better try to earn some money. I'm living in my parents' basement. I just got back from 3.5 years through 3 years in Africa and about 8 months traveling around the world. And I finally get back to New York. And I'm thinking, okay, but I had so much to talk about. I had a different perspective. So, I thought, okay, so I went to Newsday. I went to the New York Times, and I wrote these stories, and that. But one led to another. Finally, I was asked to do some interviews, and I did them. Once I did them, I said, this is interesting. I got caught up in the interest of it, in the interest of talking to other people. I enjoy it. I enjoy listening to what they have to say. I enjoyed learning. But the next thing I know, now I'm suddenly said, well, Playboy, I'm writing I'm doing the best interviews in the world. I didn't expect it.
Right. And so I guess every writer would have to just find their own way, because obviously no one's going to give you a lot of money to write a book right away, right? So
exactly, and that's the thing. You always have to, if that's your goal, fiction is your goal, keep writing.
Right.
Keep writing.
Good advice.
Maybe it'll be turned into a script. Maybe you can get maybe short stories. Write short fiction first. Try to get that out there, and then it's a luxury to be a writer and be able to make a living at it. It bites you in the ass all the time, but what greater freedom is there than to just be able to sit at your desk and have your brain working in a way that allows you to make a living. And,
speaking of that, because you mentioned, freelancing is one of the greatest things, one of the greatest achievements in your eyes. And I'm, mostly freelance myself. And I have found it's a mental shift, because we're taught since we're kids to just get jobs and have something steady. So do you think some people have to be sort of find a mental headspace in order to say, okay, I'm going to be a freelancer?
Well, the thing is, until about 5 or 6 or 8 years ago, I used to tell students all the time, go for it, right? If you can freelance, that's great, because it's possible. There were magazines out there that you could write for. I'm talking about freelancing as a writer, not necessarily as an artist, a sculptor, a painter. That's a whole other ball game, just as difficult. But nowadays, you don't have magazines offering you $5,000-$10,000 to write a piece. You don't. Maybe the New Yorker does, but the New Yorker also has their writers. You're not going to get in so easily. So you got to find yourself that proving ground in the beginning, and so now my advice is much closer to, if you can get a job that won't destroy your creativity.
Right.
Wallace Stevens worked in the bank. So did T.S. Eliot. Charles Bukowski worked in a post office, and so did Faulkner. Faulkner wrote As I Lay Dying in his off hours in the post office from 2 a.m. till 6 or something, and in 6 weeks. So, it's not impossible, but you got to really want it. You got to really,
Yeah.
I mean, if that's what you want to do. So you'll find a place to do it. I really encourage people to keep a journal. You can keep it as fiction or as nonfiction, but you should just write every day. Give yourself a time that's your hour or your half hour. That's all. Make it in the morning when you wake up at 5:30 and write till 6, and then that's it. The rest of the day is yours. Or do it at 1 in the afternoon. Whatever you can do it, would figure out your best time, your most comfortable time, and the time you can go back to it. You have a headache, write it anyway. Write the paragraph. I did that as an experiment with this novel that I was working on. May have been this turquoise that I wrote, but it was like what it was. I was in Ghana, and I said to myself, I have to write at least a half hour every day, no matter what. If I went out and I drank too much and I was, whatever, I'd still have to come home and sit down and do it. I wanted to see, and I actually it was to write a novel there, because what it was I had read about Faulkner doing As I Lay Dying in 6 weeks, and I said, what could I do in 6 weeks? So I gave myself that. And I wrote every day for 6 weeks, and I didn't miss a day. And I ended up writing, a novel. I did it.
Did you like that novel?
No, not that much.
But you did it.
Well, all my stuff, all the stuff from when I was 22 years old is not, something that I'm jumping to send out right now. But it is something. You know what it is? It's a good thing to have for me to work on now. That's what I'm working on now.
That's number 31, right?
Yeah, the 31st book will be something I wrote when I was 22, but it'll be edited by me now. 50 years old.
No, I'm looking forward to that, because I love that concept alone. Did you have any just on the topic of freelancing? I mean, you're hugely successful, of course, but did you have any thin times over the years where you were like, shit, what the hell am I going to do?
No, the worst times it was to me was I did a story for my sister. I lived in Brooklyn for about a year or half a year in my sister's attic after I had come home, and I was, and this is before my Japanese girlfriend, who was going to become my wife, came. So I was writing, and I did a piece for Esquire, and the editor that I worked with in Esquire was about the Black Eagle, Julius Fauntleroy, John Fauntleroy Julius, I think his name was, and he wrote a book called The Black Eagle, and he was during the World War II, and Haile Selassie, he trained the Air Force for Ethiopia. He was going to kill Mussolini. He had a plan that he was going to get to Mussolini, so it's a great story. And
sounds like it.
So, and he lived up in Harlem. And he was a black member of the Air Force there, I think in the United States as well. Anyway, so I went to see him, and I wrote this piece, and I really worked hard on it. And then what happened was, as I was working on it, the editor I was working with got drafted, or he was in the National Guard or something, and so he got out of Esquire. He was gone. And so when I finished the piece, I'd given it in, and nobody knew even about the assignment. And they said, well, and nobody was interested in this. This is another learning experience. When an editor gives you an assignment, if it goes to another editor, they don't care about it. Because they haven't worked with you on it. Anyway,
so they're not paying you when you're researching.
No,
you're not getting. Okay, so it's not until you hand it in.
Right, and then there's a kill fee. If they don't like it, they'll give you 20%, maybe 30% of the fee. So if you're going to get $3,000 and they don't want it, you may get $1,000, or it's something like that. Okay. And but it's not about money. Those things are never about money. It's about getting it published.
Right.
Anyway, that story got killed. Never, and I don't remember if they paid me or not. I probably gave me something, but I don't remember. But what I do remember was how devastated I was. And then I went out. I got a piece to do for Playboy. This was before I started doing interviews, and it was about E. Joseph Kosman, who was a mail order guy. And I was in New York, and they said, and he was in California, in Palm Springs. I flew out to on their dime to go to see him. I bought a car instead of renting a car. I got a car for $500, an old car, and I thought it would be cheaper than renting. So I got this car. I spent 3 weeks out there talking to him, going in his jacuzzi with him, talking about all this stuff. And then I came back. I wrote this story, and then I gave that to Playboy, and they ended up telling me, they said that something unusual had happened. They assigned 5 con men, in quotes, type stories, iconoclastic characters, whatever. It says usually when you assign 5 pieces, 2 or 3 work out and the others don't, and so that's why, they're covering themselves, but they give, in this case, all 5 writers handed in stories they wanted to use. So then it became, okay, they went with their senior writers first, and then the newest writers last. So they said they'll publish what I wrote, but it probably won't be for about 2.5 years, because the con man story, let's say, will be in the January of this issue. Then they won't do another con man story till maybe June or July. So by the time mine came up, so they said, if you want, you can take it back. We'll pay you for it, but which I thought was very nice of them. I didn't want to really take it back because I wanted to get published in Esquire and Playboy. That was my beginnings. That would be great. But I said, okay, I'll take it back. Right. And I ended up writing about him for Silver Fox's magazine and another magazine, a couple of different other places, but nothing like the attention I would have got with Playboy.
So are you?
Bottom line, Rob, just to finish the story, I was upstairs in my sister's attic, and I started to cry. I just started to cry. I was so low. I said, here was my shot. I was going to be a magazine writer from national magazines, and I just failed at Playboy, and I considered it a failure, and failed at Esquire. Now, truly failed in the sense of rejection, no, but close to. The feeling was nothing was happening with it. And that was, you asked me about being low. There were hard times where sometimes I'd go 6 months without getting paid for anything. But that's what you got to get used to. You have to get used to as a freelancer that maybe you won't make any money, and all of a sudden you'll make 10 to 15,000. Then you won't make any money, then you make again. So if you can afford to do that, then that's a good way of going. If you have children and they're and a mortgage, it's tougher.
Well, because in your case you had 2 children and a house. So how did it get easier because your career was getting bigger in the 80s? And
what my wife once said was, when we went to the first baby was coming, 1980, and she just said, this will bring us good luck. That's what children do. They bring you good luck, good fortune. Okay. I said, I hope so, because I quit everything. In January, my daughter was on in April. In January, I left Antioch. I was the assistant director at Antioch College, and I was the director of the writing program, master's degree in writing, which I created. I did that, but I said I quit that. I quit. I was working for Katz Gallen as a developing films for them. I was the head of their film department at the time, and they had Dolly Parton and Mac Davis and Joan Rivers and all those kinds of people. I did it for a year, and I just said, I'm not writing. I want to write, So I left that, and I decided to see if I could just make it as a writer. My wife was 7 months pregnant. So I was watching this balloon in her belly, right? And I'm thinking, have I made a mistake? Because I knew once the baby was born, 3 months from then, I would never do this. I would never quit jobs. I would keep making money. But I did. And I said to her, if I could just make $12,000 this year. No, I needed to make $36,000 that year. That's what I thought I needed just to keep us going. And as it turned out, long story short, I forgot that I had entered 50 pages of a novel I was writing to get a National Endowment of the Arts grant. I got it, $12,000.
So the good luck came.
I got two Playboy assignments. One was Patty Hearst. I forgot who the other one was, but that was also $12,000. At that time, I was getting $6,000 each. I went up to 10, but at that time it was 6. So that was another 12. And then along came Playgirl Magazine, and this editor, publisher, got in touch with me and said he wanted me to write for him. And I worked out a deal where I didn't have to use my name all the time, whatever. But I said I'll do 3 or 4 articles, but I want $12,000, and I want $800 a month first. I want $3,000 up front and $800 a month. And he agreed. I couldn't believe it. I was negotiating like that. So that was my 36. I made the 36 that year, and I said, "We're going to be fine. We're going to be fine." And then I never made less in my life. Every year I made more money than the year before, which is, knock on wood, lucky. But I mean, I just was determined.
Do you when I hear that, because I mean, some people, perhaps maybe people who are not in the arts, would think, well, that's crazy. So do you think artists have to be crazy, somewhat crazy?
I don't think it's crazy at all. So that's no, seriously.
Well, neither do I. But I'm talking from the perspective of people who perhaps.
But I don't know those people. I don't know if you're crazy or not. I mean, if that's the definition of crazy, because you have a goal and you want to pursue it in any way possible, to me, that's not crazy. That's ambitious. That's hopeful. That's positive. You can't think negatively. My whole life, I'm not a pessimist, except about politics and the world situation right now. Totally pessimistic. But as far as my kids have always said to me, they don't understand why I always seem happy. There's things all around us. That they're always depressed by something or other. There's always some kind of challenge to them, where they're always. And I'm just like, I'm smiling a lot. I sing. But I hum. I sing. Just before we started, I went to take a shower, and the sink, the shower is clogged, right? So I let it go down. I said, okay, I have to unscrew the drain. I took the screwdriver, and I never had to open it before, because we've been here for a long time. And I turned the screw, and it broke. So now I got a broken thing there. I don't know how I'm going to fix it, even if I get somebody to help me. Got a tile all around. I said, "Oh, I got a mess." I'm still laughing. I'm still smiling. I said, what the heck? What's my choice? I'm going to be angry about this. Is it going to help me if I get stressed out? It'll work out somehow or another. I'll take a shower in another room.
I love your I love your sense of humor and outlook. Because the reason I asked that was because I think most people are so afraid to take chances. So then to hear that, they think, "Oh my God, what are you, crazy? You got a baby coming." But I love how that wouldn't even enter your mind. I find that's interesting. That this is what I want to do.
See, also the other thing was, my wife is an artist, so she sitting there making 12 by 15 foot sculptures that she doesn't sell. She's getting shows. She had a show in Chicago. We had to send all that stuff. We had to pack up these huge sculptures she made. Send it all out there, right? They would, charge $3,000-$4,000 for one if she sold it. They stole them. The place, the gallery that did it, never sent anything back. We got in touch with them, and they disappeared. We never saw those pieces. I mean, talk about getting discouraged.
Oh my God,
But in the end, you get angry, and then you just go on. It's like making a bad investment, done that. And we all have. I mean, I have friends who were Bernie Madoff. They lost millions of dollars.
Right.
I know one person, one woman I know, her husband died. He had a heart attack and died over money. I had a loss like that too, in an investment. The guy is in jail right now and going to trial, but I'm not going to see any of my money back. But I saw what happened to that guy, and I said, it's not going to happen to me. I'm not going to get upset by the money I lost. It's just not. It's like it's only money, and money will come back. So don't let these petty things kill you. You can make a living. You can do it. You just have to believe in yourself. And if you don't, then you're out there doing your job, and that's okay. You can do anything you want. You can have a boss. You can get a steady paycheck, and you can live happily ever after. I have friends who've done that, and they the age of 65, 64, 3, they were able to get a pension, right? They get them. They get 75% of the money they earned every month. I get nothing. Nothing. When I didn't retire. I still haven't retired. I get Social Security. Thank goodness for that. But other than that, it's like I said, wow, all these people I know, they paid the price. They worked. They worked. They paid that price, and they're getting the benefit of it. They can travel with it. They can do things with it. They can enjoy their end of life. I'm still trying to enjoy my end of life, but I'm doing it a different way. I'm writing.
Yeah.
I'm writing books. So I'm enjoying more now than ever. I love the books I've written lately. I love the new book. It's called The Colorist. I'm working with a friend now to get the right cover. That's exciting to me.
Yeah.
It's fun. I get the next project coming up. And if something nice happens, somebody listens to this podcast and says, hey, let's do that movie you were talking about. How about Catch a Falling Star? How about Begin Again? How about Conversations with Brando? You got it. I'm easy to work with.
There you go. Producers, publishers. Yeah. If you're out there, there you go. Give Leary a call.
That's the James Michener philosophy of life. And I agreed with him. Like he said to me once when I told him I turned down money to get an offer to do The Art of the Interview as a book early on. And he said, Larry, he says, if you don't get it out there, he says, I have pirated copies of my books in Taiwan. I don't get anything for it. But someone on a cruise ship happened to have seen that, and they came back to me, and they wanted to make this as a TV miniseries. And that's how that happened, one of his books. And he says, you got to get the book on the shelf. Otherwise, nothing can happen. Put it on the shelf, something can happen, and something you have no idea how. Yeah. And I find that in a certain way, The Art of the Interview got on the shelf, and you called me. So other people have called me. I get on TV. Why? Because people who want to learn how to interview sometimes, feel, why don't I talk to that guy? Maybe I'll get some good tips from him, right? I mean, that's fine. And then maybe other people will read the book, and that's nice too. And if they read that book, maybe they'll read you talking to me, or they'll read the memoir. You show me yours, or any of these things. You just don't know. You don't know.
No, you don't. And just mentioning it again, this is such a great book for anyone who wants to interview people or podcast or journalism. And also, I'm almost done. You Show Me Yours and You Talking to Me, which are Larry's memoir books, which are really, really fascinating. There's a question in the comment box from Mando Lindley Roadshow. Larry, can you tell the story from the Houstons about producer Sam Spiegel going to dinner at John Huston's house? The incident with the monkey and the peanuts. It's hilarious. What's the story?
Sam Spiegel was a producer who there's a book on him. The documentary came out about him too. He was a real character, and so he and John formed the company back around 1948 or so, and they did the African Queen together actually. And but Sam ended up getting all the money, and John didn't, and so they split up after that, and they were arguing. But Sam. He wanted, when he liked to go have parties at his house. He liked to go, and John, when he was coming to John's, there were going to be other people around. So John, he got some rubber peanuts. I think it was because Sam always ate. If something was there, he would always eat off people's plates. He always eat it. So he had the I think it was with the rubber peanuts that he did, that he put in some, and then the others was with the monkey, and I don't know if the monkey peed in the peanuts or something like that, and then he ate them again. I mean, I have to read it up, but whatever it was.
This is in the book, I imagine.
Yeah, John did some of the craziest things. He had John Garfield arrested during in 1948 film and or 49. But by fake cops. He had fake cops come in, and they had him thrown in jail for a while. I mean, then he had so many kinds of crazy incidents that he would do. One time there was this big horse race in Paris, and John and Billy Pearson was a jockey. He was his closest friend. So they were like Mutt and Jeff, tall and short, and they were betting on this one horse, and they kept putting more money on it, and like the French steeplechase. the horse came in, it won. So they had so much money, but you couldn't take the money out of France, right? It was all in franc. They got all this money, and so they went into the hotel, a major hotel. They brought in some whores. They had a great time, and then they figured they hid the money someplace in the hotel because they didn't want the horse to find it and steal their money, whatever. Anyway, they hid it in a certain way, and when it came time to pay these women, they couldn't find where they hid it. They was, I guess, very drunk. So they ended up giving them like furniture from the hotel. Take this lamb, go out the back door. But they kept returning to that hotel over the years because they never found their money. And I mean, it was like crazy.
Oh my God!
Stories.
Yeah, I gotta read that book. I'm planning to read it soon. On the topic of directors, what were you gonna ask Hitchcock? Because I know he canceled right before he was going to talk to you, right? Is there a couple of things you can remember you wanted to ask him?
No, nothing specific. It was, again, if you ask me that about anybody, I can't answer what I was going to ask them because the interviews I always did were always so general. They were to do a whole life, so you'd want to know about his childhood. You'd want to know about his teenage years. You want to know about the meeting of his wife, who was his good partner. And then, how did he work? How did he structure things? Because you knew that's how he basically knew where every scene was going to be. He had it all mapped out. He had a famous thing saying that actors are like cattle.
Right.
You could have heard them. I don't know if he actually said that or not. I probably would have talked to him about that. But again, working with his obsession with blondes. Whatever. There was a lot. God, Hitchcock, there was so much to talk about. Talk about his being overweight. Talk about the television show, the Alfred Hitchcock Hour. So there was no one thing. It's the same with John Huston. What I wanted to do was find out how that man thought, what he did, and I think I got to him, but it took 3 years.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, like I said, I'm really looking forward to that one. What are you still? I love this Chris Walken story of pushing the sculpt forward. Are you still doing that every day?
He did. Me, no, but he would always pull his hair like this.
Yeah.
And then he would pull his scalp. And that's because his hair stands up, all the time. Chris Walken.
Right.
I really like Christopher Walken. As a person, he's a really nice person. He's quiet. He's humble, he's a worker. He just wants to work all the time. He's not temperamental like a lot of other actors. He's been doing it since he's 5 years old. He and Jodie Foster have been, like he says, Walken said, I'm not on planet Earth. He says, he says, I'm like in a spaceship. It's like, I'm not normal. And you can sort of see it in the way his work. He's noticeable. He's got
definitely
the way he talks.
Definitely.
Yeah. And I told him once. I said a great book for you to read is "On Nature" by Huysmans. It's a French a novel, and it's really quite something. "Against the Grain" is another title in English. And I sent it to him, and he loved it. And then he sent me back another of that guy's books back. It's like, that was unusual. When people actually read something you suggest, and then they, and it turns them on to something else. That was nice.
Are there some books that you think everyone should read to live a good life?
Yeah.
Are there a few books you can mention?
Well, that's what I mentioned a bunch of them earlier, talking about Gatsby and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I think we to me, certain writers meant a lot to me. My book, Endangered Species, which is interviews with 12 writers, it really goes into that about, why did Don Levy really turn me on, and and Norman Mailer and Saul Bellow and Philip Roth. There were writers that influenced me a good deal. T.S. Eliot, but it doesn't necessarily have to be those writers. It depends on where you come from. If you're Latino, you want to read Marquez. You want to read some Mario Loso Vargas. I mean, there's a lot of really good stuff out there. And if you're French, of course, you're going to read Flaubert. You're going to read Baudelaire. And Russian. I mean, the Russians, great Russian writers.
Yeah,
I mean,
Dostoevsky.
Chekhov, right?
Chekhov,
and Gogol. I mean, it's just there's so much out there. It's a big frustration of mine to think that I am so illiterate, and I like to read, but when I think about all that I haven't read, Thomas Bernhard, I bet you never even heard of him.
No.
And he's Austrian. I discovered this guy, and it was just like, I love his writing. I love what he was doing, and it's you just don't know. To me, it's like exciting that you can find somebody that you've never heard of, and I'm not anybody. I'm not anybody. There's something I'm reading right now. I just find books on my bookshelf that are great. Sabbath's Theater by Philip Roth. My wife is looking for another book to read. So I said, Philip Roth told me that didn't tell me. I read that Philip Roth said that Sabbath Theater was his favorite novel. So I have it, and I haven't read it yet. So I mentioned it to her. She's reading it now. And that's fun. I kind of look forward to the fact to one day being what she's doing now, reading all the time. I think that's but the problem is every time I'm, like today, I thought of a story. I finished my book of stories. There's 31 of them. I got it all done. I'm ready to send it out. And today I thought of an interesting idea for a story. And, so I'll probably play with it a little bit. And if I do, maybe I'll add it to the book. Otherwise, the book of stories.
Would you ever start a podcast like this? Would you ever do something like this?
I could. If somebody made me the offer. I mean, recently someone did actually say, they have a studio and all this. They said to me, "You'll make a lot of money because I'll tell my stories. I'll play the tapes of people I've interviewed, all that kind of stuff."
Yeah.
So if it's convenient, I'll do it. That is, if someone sets up everything for me so that I could just have to go someplace and sit down and talk,
right?
I'll do it. If I have to do everything by myself, like you do everything, including advertising it,
yeah.
I don't want to do all that stuff if I can help it. That's all work. And I'm hoping for you that it pays off. That is, maybe you'll get 600 viewers, maybe you'll get 1,000, maybe you'll get 10, and eventually you'll get enough viewers that somebody will say, "We'll advertise on your show, on your YouTube or whatever," and that's how you make your money. But for me to do it, I'm not going to get a 10,000, hits the first time I do it. It's going to take a while. It's a build-up. Do I
unless you had maybe someone like Pacino on, 4 nights with Pacino, or I don't know if they would do it. That might be that could really work.
Yeah, but that's an awful lot of work for me.
Yeah,
too.
That's
because
true.
I prepare. I don't wing it with people like that. I'm totally prepared. So it's going to take me a few weeks for each guest. Right? That's not the way Mark Maron works. You just go in and whatever you talk about, you talk about. And that's what he and I were talking about that when I was on his podcast.
I remember. Yeah.
I mean, he was very like, "You must hate me," he said. I said, "Why would I hate you?" He says, "Because I'm doing what you do, except I don't prepare for it, and I'm making a lot of money on it, and you're not. And in a certain way, I said, well, all right, that's your way of looking at it, but I'm not in competition with you. You're doing your thing. I did my thing. So I don't feel like, I should be envious, and I don't feel I should be upset by it. People have a right to be as good as they can be. So the answer to the podcast is, maybe,
right.
I mean, it could happen tomorrow for all I know. But right now, I'm working on another book.
Would you, were you ever in the past, you mentioned, you have to do a few weeks of preparation. Were you ever in the past having to do a few people at once and overwhelmed with research?
It happened once. One time was interviewing, I think I did Christy Hefner and Allen Ginsberg on the same day, or the one day and then the next day. I think that was the reason we got the limousine for Ginsberg, because I had to go somewhere and I needed to think about the questions and the work, and I didn't want to drive all the way to Laguna. So we said, let's rent a limo, take me there, then take me the other place. But for the most part, I try not to do two people at once. When I was doing the Houstons, I would do three people sometimes. Edna O'Brien, and then and Ava Gardner on the same day. Imagine that,
Was that easier though, because it was all about John? It was
Yes,
okay.
Because you're being specific. You're being okay.
Right.
Tell me John Huston stories. Let's talk about the movie, The Night of the Iguana. Let's talk about what you did, in the Bible, whatever. She did two of them, and then so then we could, or also Judge Roy Bean. She was in that. We can focus on that, but you're inevitably going to jump off into other areas anyway. But it is definitely easier if you have a topic that you're just there to talk about than you are to talk in general. That's
right. Yeah, because then all that research you have to put in for each person. Yeah. Were you ever underprepared? I know you told that Charles Grodin story, but that was
that was my underpreparedness.
So what do you do in that case? Do you just rely on your conversational skills?
Yes, and they weren't that great. I didn't think it was that good of an interview. So I learned. I can talk for hours with people. That's not a problem. But can I make interesting talk? Can I bring up subjects that about your life? I don't know enough about.
Yeah, because you would know, right? Yeah.
Yes, I can ask you. All right, tell me where you went to school. Were you a good student? What were your favorite books? What were your favorite movies? Those are general questions. And you asked a lot of those to me today, those are general, but they're not as specific as what did you really like about Citizen Kane over Magnificent Ambersons? Make me think a little bit about that kind of stuff. What was it? What was the highlight of Treasure of Sierra Madre? Was it Bogart going crazy in the desert, or was it Walter Houston's laughter? That's where you want to get into deeper and deeper, with something or more specific. So somebody who has an opinion about something can you can see if they're bullshitting you or not, if they know what the details of something, and then you're dealing with memory. I'm sure my memory is pretty good for the past, but you asked me something I saw yesterday, I can't remember. I'm not that bad, but I'll have to think about it, right?
No, you certainly seem like your memory is quite sharp. From all the stuff. You tell the stories exactly how they're written in the book. Some of them, which is quite remarkable. Was it emotionally challenging to write your memoirs, to go inside? Was that hard?
What was hard was the decision to do the memoir was this. I was just going to write a book about my life with celebrities, so it would start with Streisand, let's say, that kind of thing, and then go through Brando and Pacino, and because I knew that I was doing a behind the scene kind of life, with all these people, because I was spending so much time with them. But then I said to myself, well, what's the point of a book like that? It's like gossip. That was what Truman Capote was doing in Answered Prayers in a way, and it destroyed him. And I didn't want to hurt everybody. So I said, how can I make these people in my life work and not look like I'm just telling tales out of school? I said, the only way for me to do it is to make it part of my life, not theirs, mine. So if so I'm going to tell the story of how I was a kid from Brooklyn, how I, grew up in the streets, moved to Long Island, how I tried to interview somebody when I was 10 years old, that kind of stuff. So by the high school years, the crazy high school years with the crazy friends, because these are the stories that entertained Marlon Brando and all, when I would tell them. So I was writing that, but I gave myself the leeway of just writing it. And the next thing you know, I've written 400 or 500 pages, and I'm not even 25 years old yet. I haven't even met these famous people yet, so I got, wow, because I've had a kind of interesting life in that regard.
Yeah.
So I realized that there's a volume 2, and the volume 2 would be the book that people might pay to, publishers might pay for, the book about the celebrities.
So you talking to me.
Volume 1. And I ended that one with Brando. But the reason it took me so long was the 11th chapter. There's 12 chapters in the book. The 11th chapter was all about Streisand, Barbra Streisand, my time with her. And Barbara Streisand and I really went at it for a long time, 9 months, and it was quite interesting. I mean, I respect the hell out of her, but boy, she was a challenge every single time I went to see her. So, and I didn't want to repeat the Playboy interview because the interview is out there, but I had all these notes in my journal, and I used that to form that chapter. And I just hesitate. Once I finished that, I couldn't write the next chapter because I always thought, oh, if I finish the next chapter, I'm going to try to publish this book, and Barbara's going to sue me. I could just, not that she could win a suit because everything I said is documented.
Yeah.
But, I just felt, all this stuff. So then I just put it away for a long time. And I finally said, I got to do it. So then I wrote the Brando chapter, and then I self-published it, and never heard from Barbara because she doesn't know it exists.
Oh, really? How do you know she doesn't know?
Because I would have heard from her.
Heard from her in the sense that she'd be mad?
Yes. Well,
okay.
Of course. Yeah.
Oh, I see. Is that because she comes across as being challenging, and that would have pissed her off? Is that what you think?
I'll just tell you the final story with Barbara, and then you'll
Go ahead.
The magazine, Playboy comes out. She's the first celebrity ever to be on the cover of Playboy. And it says, "What's a nice Jewish girl doing on the cover like this?"
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
So that comes out, and it makes a lot of noise because nobody had ever talked to Barbara Streisand like this. She was very reclusive in a way. So I get on the cover of Writer's Digest with that cover in the background. They blew it up and all. That was in 1978, and oh God. So People magazine wanted to have a picture of me with Barbara. They were going to do a big story on this and how I did this with her. So they got in touch with me, and I got in touch with Barbara because I had her number, and I said, Barbara, I said, people want to do get a picture of you and I together. What do you think? And she goes, well, Larry, I don't think so. I think, if they want just a picture of me, that's okay. She didn't want to do a picture with me. But, I mean, you think you'd be a little generous in your life, right? But not Barbara. Okay, so anyway, I had told my mother that I said, because she read People. I said, People is going to do a story on us, because I didn't think that was going to be that big problem, but it was. So anyway, they didn't do the story because Barbara didn't want to let the picture taken with me, and so I told this to my mother. And I said, she's, what's happening with that magazine? I said, no, it's not going to happen. She doesn't want to do the picture. And my mother, who never, ever said a bad word about anyone, she was the most gracious woman in the world. She just said on the phone to me, the shit. The shit. I couldn't believe it. It's the first time I ever heard that word out of her mouth. And
God.
Really, it was funny. And that's how I end the chapter with Barbara's. I get that loads, and then Barbara gave my wife and I a gift. We got married, so she sent us a gift. What did she send us? A koosh ball with the price tag on it, $4.95. Imagine that as a gift, and with the price tag on it.
With the price tag, that's ridiculous.
I gave her a pair of boxing gloves because we fought so much, right?
Yeah.
And I wrote on one glove, to Barbara, love Larry, right? There was, she gets, this is the last day I'm seeing her, right? She takes the gloves and she says, you should have kept one for yourself.
God.
Even there, I couldn't please her. That was Barbara, but she was a one of a kind, she really was an original. And so yeah, that was
When have you lost? Did you ever talk to her again after all that, or
a few times afterwards? But mostly it had to do with one time. It was at Sandy Gallen's 40th birthday. Now Sandy has since died. Sandy was a big time manager, and I worked for him for that year when I was doing these film projects. He had his birthday party, so he invites me. Everybody in Hollywood is there, every major studio head and, every actor, every, big time people. And there's Barbara. And it's in this big auditorium type place. I forget what hotel it was in, but it was a big place. And there were tables below and tables above. And I sat in the back back table with my wife, and there's Barbara in the front. So I said to my wife, I said, "Oh, let me go say hello to Barbara for a minute." So I just, everybody's looking at who's. I wasn't conscious of that. I wasn't trying to show off. I wasn't trying to, I just knew a few people, and one of them was Barbara. I just spent 9 months with her, over a year with her actually, so I go over and I bend down and I say, "Looking good," and she looks at me, and I see blank in her eyes. She does not recognize me, and it's like,
wow.
And I said,
how many years later was this?
Oh no, this was just a 4 months, 5 months later, something like this.
Oh God! I'm thinking this is sounding like 10 years later. So this is just
no.
Okay.
No. So, but then I look and then I whispered in her ear. I said, "It's Larry." Oh, and then she opened up. Her eyes, she caught focus. I told this story to Elliot Gould, who was his,
right. They're married, yeah.
And I said, I saw Barbara. I said, she didn't even recognize me. And he says, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, I explained the situation." He says, "Larry, if you come over to me in a situation like that, I won't recognize you either." He says, "Well, when you're under the glare like that, and everybody is looking at it, you know what I mean? It's like you don't expect anybody to come up to you because you are who you are. So if someone comes up, you would obviously be the best friends. You're not that, but you're so that was like all right. So that was an interesting lesson. Then I saw her. Elliot used to have Hanukkah parties or Christmas parties or whatever it would be. Sometimes people would come over, and there would be Jimmy Kahn, and there would be whoever would came. And I always was there with Elliot, and so Barbara came, and it ended up I was in the kitchen, and she comes in the kitchen, and we start talking. And we start talking about Brando because I had seen Brando by then. So this would have been 1982, maybe 80. And I saw Brando in 1879, 80. So we talked, and and she loved gossip, and we talked for a long time, for maybe a half an hour. So, and I think I may have seen her one other time after that, but that was it,
Okay. So that was okay. So that's as far as it went with as it could go with Barbara.
I was asked at one point to work on a book and all that stuff with her. I didn't want to do that. That was
right.
It was. I think Barbara is such a perfectionist that it would drive anybody.
It would drive you insane. Yeah. I don't blame you. Yeah. From what I've read, not that I know her, but from what you wrote about her. I've been really, really enjoying you show me yours, and you tell these really personal stories from your childhood. Did something that really struck me was that the experience you had with your school teacher and the old lady in the house, the sexual experience, was that damaging years later? Did it not at all? Because it's a sexual abuse, right? I mean, you're a minor and
wasn't abuse to me,
right?
They weren't that big a deal in a way, right? What is it? One teacher pulled down my zipper or something, but didn't do anything else to me. And the old lady was just an old lady, she just wanted, to have a youth around, and I didn't care. I'll learn something. And then there was. There was some funny stories like that, but you have to read the book to find out. I'm not going to go into those.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I've always been a sexual person, and so it didn't affect me negatively. Maybe it did. Maybe I wouldn't have been that way had I. I wouldn't have been thinking about girls when I was 12, 13 years old so much. But I did. But I think I had a fairly normal life. I think I was 15 when I lost my virginity, but to a friend,
right.
and that became an obsession. And it's funny because I've seen her, I still stay in touch with her, and I tell her, God, we were like two little monkeys,
This is Colleen, right?
Colleen, yeah, that wasn't the real name. I use a different name.
Oh, okay.
But
right.
Yeah, there's certain people I had to use different names on, but they know who they are. But she says we didn't do it that much. We did, it was like a different, Rashomon kind of thing where you say, well, no, we did it here, we did it here. Don't you remember when your mother came into this thing and we were hiding them there? Don't you remember this? What about in my mother's Rambler? And I know these stories. And she maybe once or twice. I said once or twice a week. it's really funny, how one remembers things. But that's okay. That's the only story that I actually wrote that little piece and gave it to Playboy in France, because in this country you don't write about having sex when you're 15. You know what I mean? Underage sex kind of thing. But the French loved it. they translated it into French, and it was like it was great. The only thing I ever had that I knew was translated into French.
I love that. I like that. There, you got to go to France to tell those kind of stories, I suppose. Yeah. What do you, when you're asking questions, do you ask personal questions early or later, or does it depend on the person?
Yeah, it really depends on the person. With Streisand, it took so long just to get her to sit down and let me turn the tape recorder on. But as soon as I turned it on, we started talking about sex. I wasn't prepared for that. I didn't even have any sex questions. I figured that will get, that'll be 6 months later. I'll get to those, and then it was like right away. And I thought, wow, why is she talking like this? And then I realized it was like her commitment. Because if we stopped talking after that day, I would have had enough material to publish something. So, I think that she was, I think it was subconscious, but I think that's how that happened. Yeah, there's some people, it happens right away when you have an immediate kind of contact with. Yeah. You can start talking about that. But personal questions, I usually figure will come later on.
Right.
And you have to feel the situation. If somebody's in a somber mood, when I was with Cher, and I'm in the CBS building with her, and Tina Turner was there, and she goes in first, and then she comes out, and I go in to see Cher, and it's taken me months to get to her, and the phone rings or something. She picks up the phone, she hangs up, and she's like devastated, and I see like tears are in her eyes. I said, "What happened?" I don't even know her yet. It's like, "Hi, Cher, what happened?" And she says, "There was a girl who had cancer. It was in the cancer ward in LA, and her dying wish was to meet Cher. And Cher had been asked, and she said she'll do it. She was going to get the girl a doll and go, but she delayed it, and she just got the call the girl had died."
Yeah, so I read that in your book. Yeah. So then, and isn't that when you said we'll do it another time, right?
I said, "Would you rather not talk about this? Would you rather not do this now?" And she says, "Would you mind?" No, of course I minded. I was prepared. I was there.
Yeah.
I made the interview, but I thought I did the right thing. I thought, I said, no, I said, whenever you want. She says, "Here's my phone number." She gives me her home phone number. I called her a few days later. She said, "Why don't you come to my house?" I went out to her house, much better than being at CBS. Now I'm in this, house that looks like an Indian, whatever. It's all laid out. And we had a very nice conversation there. So
it worked out then.
Yeah.
It still worked out. Okay.
If you're a mensch, if you're a decent person, people will pick up on it. They won't screw you. Sometimes you do get screwed. Sometimes it doesn't happen.
Right. When you have, because I this is something I always sort of think about, is in terms of, you have your questions, you have your questions written down. And I love this story when you met that artist and you memorized the questions, you read over it so much. So, and then you didn't even look. So what have you done since? Do you just have those questions and you look, as much as or do you glance, or do you just let it go?
It's so individual, Robert.
Individual.
Everybody you interview, you don't know. When I walked in with Chris Walken, and he ends up saying, let's talk in the kitchen. He standing up. There were no chairs in the kitchen. I said, okay, it was a rented house. He was comfortable in the kitchen. He wasn't even making anything. He just was comfortable in the kitchen. I didn't expect that. I thought we were going to sit down. I put the tape recorder between us. We start talking. So then he makes me a cup of coffee or tea, whatever. And I have the cup. And so I take a sip. And I put it on the counter, and he walks this way, so I sort of walk. I'm always trying to walk on it, so I'm looking at him, right? And then he would take a towel, where whatever, right, a dish towel like this, let's say, and he would walk over to where I had put because I picked up my coffee again to take another sip, and he would wipe the counter, and I noticed that, okay. But I felt underneath my thing it wasn't wet, right? But okay, this is not even his house again. So then I walked over someplace else. We talked. I put it down, took a sip, put it down, And then I'd walk around this way, and I'd pick up the cup with me, and I'd see he would walk, take the cup, and do this. He's cleaning. Okay, now I got it. He's an obsessive compulsive character. So now I'm going to have fun with it, right? So I would pick it up and I move it to this place. I pick it up again, I move it to this place until I finish it. I move this all over, and he completely didn't even know he was doing it. Right? He was following me and cleaning up underneath the invisible water. I said to him, Chris, you realize what you're doing. You know what you're doing. He goes, what? I said, you're wiping up after me. I said, every time I pick up the cup, you come and wipe it. He says, I don't do that. I said, you've been doing it the whole time. He didn't even know. I didn't expect that to be the first 20 minutes of our conversation or whatever.
I see.
If these things happen, then, if he laughs, then you're on the same wavelength. If he gets insulted, you're in a different place. You just don't deal with people. You
never know where it's going to go.
Well, like Louise Lasser, she once was married to Woody Allen, but Woody Allen, and she had just been arrested for marijuana. She had just gotten out. I'm the first journalist to go see her in Malibu, and the first thing she says is, "Do you have a joint?" I didn't expect that, so I said, "Well," she says, "Is it any good?" I always would have one with me just in case. But I said, "Well, I don't know what your potential is." She says, "I better use mine." She says, "But if you write about this, I'm going to have to kill you because I'm on probation." Now, did I expect that? No.
Right.
But we smoked a little joint and we walked down the beach and we walked back. So we hadn't started the interview yet. We were getting to know each other. Different.
Right.
So if you're open to it, anything can happen, and that's fine. But if you're like, oh wait, we have to do this, I need to get this in, it's not going to work.
Right. I see what you're saying.
You just have to be real. You have to be cool. Look, I'm wearing my Miles Davis Birth of the Cool.
Oh, very nice. There you go.
That's cool.
Yeah, that'll be the quote of the day for the Birth of the Cool for the just for this interview. When you look back on your life, do you have any regrets?
Regrets? I have
had a few.
I'm sure. I regret not having written Ava Gardner's book. That's a regret. I regret I regret not suing J. Preston Allen and Lou Allen, the producers who stole my play my Truman Capote play.
When was that? You wrote a play on Capote and they stole it?
I wrote a play based on my book.
Based on your book.
It's An Evening with Truman Capote. And Bud Cort recorded that play, and it was on NPR. They used to play it on, and the first time they played that on NPR, Bud Cort came to my house. We were going to listen to it together, and Carol Kane was his friend, and I got to know him. And then the doorbell rings, and I opened the door, and there is Timothy Leary.
Oh.
Timothy Leary and his girlfriend Susan. I think it was girlfriend, maybe wife. Anyway, they come. He says, "Is Bud Cort here? Is this where we're going to hear the Capote play?" I said, "Come on in." And so that was an amazing kind of a moment. Yeah. And I regret not saying to Timothy Leary, "I've never taken acid, but I would with you." Right? Turn me on. I didn't do that. And I still haven't taken acid, but maybe, I don't know. I think I've passed that. But regrets happen in different ways,
Right.
So, but I regret not suing them because
So how did they steal this? How did they stole it and produced it and didn't? Is that what happened?
Yeah. What happened is, I don't know. These stories take time to tell, so I try to cut them short.
Okay.
But what happened is, I wrote this thing. Eddie Rissian, this guy was working at Playboy, like a vice president of Playboy. I'm in the elevator with him one day at the Playboy building because I had an office there. And as we're going down, I said, "How you doing, Eddie?" And he says, "Oh, I'm leaving the company." I said, "Really?" I said, "What are you gonna do?" He says, "I want to produce plays." So I said, "Seriously?" I said, "You should do mine." He says, "What did you write?" I said, "Based on my book. It's called An Evening with Truman Capote." He says, "Let me have a look at it." So I show it to him. He likes it. He gives it to J. Preston Allen because he knew her. She wrote "I'm Not Rappaport" and "Send in the Clowns" or whatever it was. She was quite a well-known screenwriter. and playwright. And she was married to this guy, Lou Allen, who was a producer. So she reads it and she says, I want to do this. And what we're going to do is they start talking about how we'll start it in the West Coast in Seattle. They had a theater there or something, and they had another one somewhere in Chicago or something like that. So they said, we will vacuum up all the money. I remember the way they talked. They'll vacuum up all the money until we get to New York, and we'll open on Broadway and blah, blah, blah. And they had somebody in mind. They had an actor in mind who was not known yet to play Capote. So they wanted me to come to New York to meet with her and to meet him. Who is him? Nathan Lane. They want. And so it was pretty exciting, the whole idea of this. I'm going to have a Broadway show, based on the first show. But I couldn't go to New York at the time. I said, look, I'm finishing up this Playboy interview, but I have to be in New York in 3 weeks. I'm going to see Robert De Niro. So I can see you then. I think it was around that time. So, okay. But she was anxious. And she says, well, let's make a deal about, okay. I said, okay, that's fine. So I said, I had to get a lawyer. I didn't have a lawyer. So I said, okay. So I found out about this woman, Renee Golden. And I said, so I met with her and I said, look, they want to make a deal for this, for my play. But it was a weekend. It was like a Friday, and I was leaving to like Big Bear or something like that. With some friends had a cabin. This was before cell phones, there was no phone. So I said, I'm going to be gone till Monday. I was leaving Friday, so I said to her, listen, you're going to get a call on, I think it's Saturday. They get it from them. I said, just make the deal. Whatever. I said, if you can't reach me, I'll be incommunicado, but just make whatever they want. Give it to them. I said, make the deal and we'll go forward from there. I come back on Monday and there's a phone. I get a message on my machine and it's from this lawyer. She says, well, I think I may have screwed this up for you. Okay. I call her immediately. What happened? She says, well, they want to direct it. They want to produce it. And she wants co-writing credit. And the lawyer said, I said, no, that's not fair. You didn't write it. He did. It's like you're doing everything else. Why do you have to take that from him?
Yeah.
And she said, well, that's the price, to pay. She was going to make some changes. I don't know what she wanted to do, but, she wanted co-writing. I said, I don't have anything to do with Broadway. I'm not there in my head. If I can get something on, and if that's the price of admission, then do it. Let her have co-writing. I don't care. If this really works. Well, I told Eddie Rissian when I found this out, I said, look, this is what happened. I think if you can change it, tell her it's okay. They're in Gstaad. They're in Switzerland or whatever, they're skiing. And so John Calley, who was the president of Paramount at the time, I believe, was a friend of Eddie Rissian. So Eddie gets in touch with John Calley, who's friends with them. And he says, tells them the story. John Calley says, okay, look, I'm going to Gstaad to meet them soon, so I'll bring this up and see if I can help you resolve this. Okay. Anyway, they come back. When they come back, John Calley, Jay Preston Allen and whatever, Lou Allen, I guess his name was, whatever. He was going to be at the Century City Hotel in LA, wants to meet with me. I said, great. I go and meet with him. He's a very elegant man. He had one of those cigarette holders, long, he would smoke his cigarette. Reminds me of John Huston in a way. And so I said, look, if that's what she wants, I'm not going to stop it. I just want to get this done. Let me talk to Jay Preston Allen and my wife and I'll get back to you. Never got back to me. Then about 2 months later, my sister calls and tells me that there's a show called True about Truman Capote with Robert Morse. They didn't get Nathan Lane, Robert Morse, and that's opening in Boston. A trial, So I said, look, do me a favor, go up there. sneak in a tape recorder. I'll pay for this whole thing, to buy a ticket, go see it, and send me the tape. I want to hear the play. She sent me the play. And a lot of it was mine. There was things that Capote said to me about losing your IQ in California once, 1 point a year, whatever. Well, a lot of those lines were directly from my book, from my introduction, from other, and a lot of it was there. So I thought I had a case. They basically decided to sweep up all the money but keep it all to themselves, right? And they just screwed me. And so I met with I forgot what his name was, a famous writer, columnist for the Hollywood Reporter. And I told him this whole story, and he wrote the whole thing up in the back. I thought, let him sue me, let him come after me, because this is a true story. And then I met with some lawyers about it. And the lawyers I asked, I said, what can I do here? And they said, it's intellectual property. So it's a case that you can win or you could lose. It could go either way. So we can't give it to you we can't do it on contingency. You need to give us $25,000 down and blah, blah, blah. Well, that was a lot of money for me at the time. And I'm thinking, now my mistake, and you asked me a regret, my regret was not going to Al Pacino, who is a friend. And I'm just saying, Al, could you lend me $50,000 or whatever to go after these people? Because I think what would have happened when I think about it is they would have just paid me off. They would have probably, rather than do a lawsuit and fight it, they would have given me whatever. But anyway, that went on to Broadway, and then PBS did a thing on it.
Oh man!
So that was like a big deal, and I regret not suing them.
That must have hurt. I mean, that must have. Jesus!
I mean, it was like a life lesson, that people will screw you. So Ava Gardner and Truman Capote play. And not doing acid with Timothy Leary. Not acid. Those are not my only regrets.
Those are a few. Yeah. Oh God. Oh, that's quite the story. Those are quite the stories. Yeah. Oh wow. Well, Larry, thanks so much again for coming back and talking some more. I hope I got better at cutting you off.
No, you didn't. You didn't really, but that's okay.
Oh shit! I gotta work on this. You see, you're telling such interesting stories. It's hard to cut you off.
Yeah, well, that last story probably took 10 minutes. But that's why I don't know. But sometimes I hear stuff. I say, "Oh, like you asked me about my sex things. I can tell those stories. It's not that I don't want to, but those are good stories. I like to embellish. You know what I mean? So
of
the next
course,
thing you have the time. But let me ask you something. You had 40 more questions to ask me. Did you get them all in?
I did. Yeah.
Then we did. Yeah. Then we did.
I got every single question. And
what was disappointing?
Sorry.
What were you disappointed with regarding my answers? What didn't I answer that you would have liked a further extension of, or what do you feel like you may have failed at in this conversation we've had over 2 days?
Well, there was nothing really that I was disappointed with in terms of what you answered. In terms of what I may have been disappointed in with myself, hard to say, because since it's a podcast, it's a film podcast. These stories people love. They love the film stories. So, but obviously, I love to go as deep as I can and at the stuff that you are interested in, into a person's personality. But as you see, what I learned was that this is not the right form. I mean, you need days and time that you spent, right? So, right. I mean, I'd have to read, and I want to. I'm actually, something I was going to mention in a minute was read every single one of your book and talk for months. I mean, I'm interested in doing that. So where I'm disappointed is learning that you can't really do that on this forum unless I have you back every week.
Well, but if you want to flatter a writer, you just say, "Hey, listen, I like to read I'm going to read your novels. Maybe we can talk about those." I'll say, "Great." I'll read the Madonna Paints a Mustache. Let's talk about those.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I mean, in a certain way, unless I'm ensconced in this other project where I can't get away from it, I'm happy to talk to you about certain things if you want to spend the time.
Well, that was my plan. I'll have Larry back every month.
That was my plan with Truman Capote, and
right.
I did it 4 different times, and then he died. Hey, maybe that's not a good thing to tell you, but
I wouldn't want to wish that on you.
A lot of people I talked to, it was so funny. The ones I did cover stories on, the guy who made his own planes, they put him on the cover of Newsday's LA magazine. He died the next week. Another one go. What was it? There was something about the Roosevelt Raceway. Someone else died, and then somebody else. I did about 5 stories, and everybody seemed to have died within 2 weeks after the article came out. So it's like I couldn't talk about that because I was like the agent of death.
I had a similar thing happen. I had a director on, and he died 2 weeks later last year. Yeah. So I mean, maybe I shouldn't tell you that, but I don't want to scare anyone.
Henry Fonda. Henry Fonda. Yeah. I was the last person to talk to Henry Fonda. He died soon after. Listen, you didn't ask me about this picture behind my head.
The Ulysses one there?
Well, that's Ulysses.
Sorry, I'm pronouncing that wrong.
Yeah.
Or the Michener one you're talking about.
That's actually a poster from UCLA, but there's a picture above it. My Picasso. Looks like a Picasso, right?
Actually, yes.
It's actually a portrait. See, there's James Michener looking over my shoulder.
There's Michener, yeah. That's a real Picasso.
Well, it's actually my nephew who did this drawing when he was 7 years old, or 7 or 8.
Wow.
Oil. And so I've had it ever since, But I notice as I'm talking, I say, gee, that's funny that it's there, It's like just a kid's drawing, but I've had it up all this time. But now that I mentioned to you, I only mentioned it because I said maybe somebody's saying, what is that thing in the background?
Yeah, no, I thought it was part of because I've seen that in other interviews of yours, and I thought it was a part of the
Ulysses.
I don't know. I have a hard time saying Ulysses book poster there.
Yeah,
but it's a separate portrait. Okay, very cool. Well, that for anyone who's wondering, that's what it is. Larry's nephew wrote that. One last thing I was going to mention is if you go to LawrenceGrobel.com, so there you can get all of Larry's books, and of course I recommend the ones I've read anyways, but I'm sure they're all great. You show me yours. You Talking to Me, the Pacino, Brando, Robert Evans, Truman Capote, Ava Gardner, the Houstons, and there's actually a writer that I've had on the podcast, Raquel Stetcher. She has a blog called outofthepastblog.com where she has a summer reading challenge. And you can pick. You have to read 6 books and review them by September 15th. So I'm taking this as an opportunity to read because I haven't read the Houston's book, the Ava Gardner book, the Brando I've read, but you can reread books. So I'm going to read, and the Evans one. I checked with her. She said Evans counts, even though he's not necessarily classic Hollywood period, but he's late 60s, so close enough. So I'm going to read them all and then review each of them. So there you go, Larry.
But if it has to be Hollywood related, then the 2 novels, Catch a Falling Star and Begin Again, Finnegan, are Hollywood books. They're about actors, and so
is it from the classic period, like pre-1970? Is it like take place at that time?
A little later than 70, but not that much later.
Okay, I'll check with her. With her.
No, the Beginning and Finnegan takes place closer to now, but the Catch a Falling Star is I would say it was originally written as an actor in the 70s, in the early 70s.
Okay.
But those 2, and the other ones, well, the short stories, those are timeless. I mean, they're not written, but they're not Hollywood related. But okay, enjoy. You'll Ava Gardner's a breeze because it's short.
Yeah, I'm starting it tomorrow.
And the Houston's is the longest of those. That's a big 850 pages. But
I'm up for it.
I think it's interesting. I mean, it's got so many crazy stories in there that plus every single movie these people have done is in there, and the behind the scenes of it. Wise Blood. Oh,
I like that one too. Yeah,
I really liked, and I kept thinking the John Huston movie, and I kept thinking, Flannery O'Connor. I couldn't come up with Wise Blood. So there we go. Now I feel like
I also love Fat City by him.
Fat City is a good movie too.
Really, really good. Yeah. He wanted Brando for that. I don't know if you knew that.
He wanted Brando for everything. He loved Brando.
Yeah. Reflections of a Golden Eye was fantastic with Marlon. Speaking of Marlon, tomorrow at 4, I'll be back with the writer of He wrote the book on the making of a One-Eyed Jacks, Toby
Oh,
Road. So tomorrow at 4, it's a really wonderful book. It might interest you.
yeah.
There's another question. Are you still in touch with Angelica Houston?
I'm in touch with Danny. Danny,
Brother.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I just heard he's in London at the moment. I just emailed him about something, and he just said he's at the airport. He'll call me, whatever. But I'm not in touch with Angelica. I would love to be. I'd love to see her and talk to her, but no. The thing is that sometimes you wonder about, it's kind of a strange thing to have written a book like The Houstons and to know so much about a family. I don't think Angelica, there's anybody alive who knows more about the Houstons other than Danny, Tony, not even Danny actually, because Danny doesn't know as much, but Tony and Angelica, and there's Joan Buck is a very good friend of Angelica's, but there's only a handful of people who would know the kind of things that I know, having researched it
Right.
and having talked to so many people. So you would think that you'd want to keep in touch with a person like me, because I'm sort of like a historian for them. But on the other hand, it's also a difficult thing because when you know so much, maybe they don't
know everything.
they don't feel that comfortable. So I keep my distance.
Right.
When John died I went to the memorial, but I didn't go to the funeral because it was a closed funeral. And so there was Jack Nicholson was there with Angelica, and Angelica asked, "Where's Larry?" Somebody told me where's, and I thought I wasn't invited. I was with John all the time. I wanted to be there. I was writing about it. But it was like, I just felt the family should have said something to me about it. Like, Larry, why don't you come? Because I was giving them their space. Sometimes you make a mistake that way. I should have done that. But because then maybe you look like you're snubbing them.
Right.
That certainly wasn't what I was doing.
No, I can understand that. I probably would have done the same unless I was invited. Did you read her memoir? She wrote a book.
Yeah, she wrote 2.
Yeah.
I read some of it. Yes, I have both of those books. It's fun. They're fun to read. They're not going to go into the detail and the heartache stuff that I did with them, but that I didn't expect that.
I was thinking I'll have to get to those one day because I like her a lot as well. Well, thanks again, Larry. I really appreciate how much time you spent over these last couple of conversations. And of course, I'd love to have you on again. Talk all your novels and more and more.
Go ahead. Read. Happy reading. I'll talk to you in a few months.
Yeah, exactly. I've got a lot on my plate. Sorry, there's just one more question for the record for both of you. Is it better to be rich and famous or immortal? I'll let Larry take that one.
Well, since you're not going to become immortal, why don't you just be rich and famous?
Yeah, there you go. You won't know about it later.
Right. Enjoy it while you can.
Exactly.
All right.
Well, thanks so much again, everyone. And if this is anyone's first time on my channel, please consider subscribing by pressing the subscribe button, which you can find beside the description box below, and then click the bell in order to get a notification every time I go live or release a new video. And the podcast is also on MoPfi TV, which is a free entertainment app, which has other podcasts and movies and TV shows and stuff like that. And the the link for that is in the description box below as well. Okay, well, thanks so much again, Larry. Thanks everyone for watching.